Zach's Eternal Weekend Journey.
Next on Eternal Durdles.
Hello and welcome to the holiday season of Eternal Durdles. This December, we are celebrating the holiday season by posting a video every single weekday in December. That means 5 days worth of content every week. As you can imagine, that's a huge lift. It's basically like a second job for me at this point. So if you can support us by going to patreon.com/eternaldurdles, that would be much appreciated. As always, the show is free, but you can get ad-free content on Patreon. You also will get, starting January again, a bonus episode from us every week. And without further ado, I just wanted to thank everybody who's already a patron. And here's the show. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Blackman. Phil, how's it going, man?
Zach, did you get to spin any Sensei's Divining Tops at Eternal Weekend?
I spun 0 Sensei's Divining Tops for Eternal Weekend. I did get to Cephalid breakfast several people on the play in game 1, you know. But yeah, let's go over my my Eternal Weekend experience. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel. I'll start with Friday when I got in. I got a chance to play in a legacy side event.
Zach, but for the first time listeners, of which there are bajillions of, what did you play?
Oh yeah, I played Cephalid Breakfast. I played a slightly tweaked version of Cephalid Breakfast, very close to the version that came in second place. I was playing an extra basic land, an extra Urza Saga. I was playing a Days package instead of like 4 Swords Plowshares. There's some minor differences, but more or less the same list. And the list will be below, so you can check that out, of course. But I had been testing this particular build for about 50 matches, and I had been testing the deck for about 100 matches. And I mean, to be honest, I had been going about 50% with this deck, but I felt like this was, I was in for a penny in for a pound at this point. And in the way the format is right now, where like it feels like ships are passing in the night and everyone's just kind of doing their own thing, this was the deck that made me feel like I had the most agency to like do combo things, but also do control things, to be able to like have a little bit of back and forth against my opponents. So that, I just went with the deck that I felt the most comfortable with. But like in the blind, I would say that I am not a Cephalid Breakfast player for life. And we'll see after the BNR. Maybe it makes this deck even more effective. And I go with that. But yeah, so I got in on Friday and I played some side events. I went 1-1 in the first side event that I played, which was like a large challenge. So it was like timed, and you had some sort of like sudden death match situation where like whoever had the highest life total at the end of turn 5 won the game, and I Swords to Plowshare my own creature against another guy named Zach. Hi, Zach.
You played the Zach mirror.
It's called a Zach off, Phil.
Okay, got it. So you Zacked off each other.
Yeah.
And Swords to Plowshare is coming in for the big wins.
Yeah, I was able to Swords to Plowshares my own guy to get my life total up above 16 was the life total at that time. So a weird way to win in that matchup, but you play the rules of the game. So then in the next round, I played against this guy, Brad. Brad was awesome. Brad got out a Volgavoth on the second turn against me, and I had no idea. We've talked about Volgavoth, and mostly that card to me was a bunch of words and ward, sacrifice three non-land permanents, and 9/9 lifelink and whatever else it had. So I was like, or flying, right? I didn't realize that it had other text beyond, it's a good creature in combat. It actually also stops me from doing my thing with my breakfast combo. So I started to do my breakfast combo, and Brad was like, okay, those 3 cards go under Volgavoth. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to slow down.
You got to read the cards. You got to read the cards. Fortunately, Breakfast and every Nadu variant might actually be the best setup to actually deal with the Valgavoth,
Yeah.
because you can actually get a bunch of permanents on the table, and you have Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, indeed. That was the plan in that first game, was to get enough permanents to swords this guy, and I got enough permanents, but I did not get a swords plowshares in time. So that was that was that match, and I think the second match ended in similar fashion, maybe to an Atraxa or something like that. But at the end of the day, 1-1, kind of a not a great put up. That I played in a Premodern event. I 3-0'd a Premodern event with Stasis, so I was feeling pretty good about myself playing Stasis.
Are you not the most excited for us to be Stasis bros going into 2025?
I mean, if anything about the future is poignant, it is that I'll be playing Stasis until the heat death of the universe. Apparently,
like you and I gotta you. I know you already got your black border Stasi, but I gotta get some black border Stasi.
Yeah, I've got those. I do have one extra one, Phil. So maybe I can hook you up with one CE. Stasis.
Oh, there you go. So also, Zach is on the for all the people listening. I know we got some extended people with reach. Zach is looking for a playset of Underground Seas at under 600 apiece. So, condition, Zach?
Condition has to be at a particular level to be paying exactly 600. But I'm
at a particular level, guys. I'm looking for at a particular level.
I will say this: the cheaper, the better. Right now, I'm just gonna bite the bullet and get these so that I can play a myriad of several other decks, just so I have more. It's going to make the podcast better if I can pivot and play more decks, because we know Phil's not going to do that. So we have to have somebody.
Let's well, now that he's coming for me, actually, everybody hang on to your Underground Seas. Don't give Zach any of them. Actually, I think the Underground Seas are good where they are. I don't.
Yeah. How about that burned? So I played in a Premodern side event. I 3-0'd that, which was awesome. Finals was against the mirror, Stasis versus Stasis, which I there are a few people in this world who have played the Stasis mirror match more than I have. I love a Stasis mirror match. But I don't want to go too deep into that, because
give us the critical. What is the critical thing to know for the Stasis matchup?
Okay, well, I tend to let my opponent do all the stasising, and I just counter what I think is relevant, because all of your counter spells are free. If they're not putting pressure on your life total, you're winning the game. So
you just never let a Black Vice resolve, and you can't lose.
Yeah, and my opponent was not playing Black Vice; they were playing Morphling as their win condition. So I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage there, because I don't have to expend 5 mana to make things happen. But I found out about the Morphling in game 2 when we had put 6 or 7 cards on the stack, all because of a Chain of Vapor bounce on my Black Vice, which I should have just been sure, and then played the Black Vice later. Yeah. But I expended all of my counter spells to keep this Black Vice in play, and then my opponent slammed a Morphling, and I lost game 2. But now that I knew, okay, there's Morphling as a card I have to worry about, I brought in Powder Kegs. And once I resolved my first Powder Keg, I let it tick up to 5. My opponent just continued to cast Stasis and bounce Stasis and cast Stasis and bounce Stasis. Meanwhile, I just sat there, accruing cards and advantage. And also, my opener was 1 lander that after a Malta 6. So I was just well, I mean, he's not going to kill me immediately, so why don't I just chill and draw cards? And I think I got to my second land on turn 4 or something like that. It was pretty pathetic, but fortunately, knowing that my opponent wasn't playing Black Vice, I was able to just be well, I mean, I'm not going to die to Black Vice. Maybe I'll get there eventually. There were several times where I had no land in play because I was trying to gush to find more land. In game 3, I got out a Powder Keg, and then I was able to successfully counter every Chain of Vapor the opponent put up, and then you can't have a Morphling on the board if I can just kill it. So he had drawn more cards, so he scooped, and that was it. So from there, I played in another Legacy event, and I played against Painter, and I made a giant bonehead mistake. Just I think between the flight being late and getting in on like Thursday night and like kind of not having a super great like dinner. Not your fault, Phil. I'm not blaming you for that. I just I made the mistake of ordering a chicken parm and then not taking Lactaid, and that was rough. But so just overall like kind of being like kind of weird after a pretty heady Stasis match. I decided to play in another legacy event, and I lost to Painter with like a green mana on the board that he painted me, grindstone me out, and I could have just like Memories Journey and won the game, and I just like scooped up my cards in a bit of a huff, and it was like, oh, I'm an idiot, like, and that was game one, and in game two, I think I won. Game three, I lost. And so it was kind of whatever. But I did end up meeting James of MTG Punks, who I'm actually interviewing later today. And his episode will be up later this week. As you all know, we're doing an episode every weekday in December. So that is a thing that I'm grinding content for. So let's talk about the main event, Phil. So in round one, I faced Demir Tempo, this fellow Try. He said that he had just picked up the deck, and not to go too far into the weeds of every match, but this is the thing that I think screwed me up for the entire tournament. Was game one I won relatively quickly, and right as we were shuffling up for game one, that music popped on, and it really just threw me off, and I was really trying to like block it out, but I was having a lot of trouble doing that. And still, I was doing really good in game two with a Nadu and an Archimeeba and a Shuko in play, and I drew 4 cards. Those 4 cards were Narcomoeba, Memory's Journey, Dread Return, and Thassa's Oracle, which was not great.
It's exactly what you want to draw.
So anyhow, my opponent was able to went to remove my Nadu, and I kind of fought over. I had 1 Force of Will, and I fought over the Nadu with the only blue card in my hand that wasn't a card I need to like kind of win the game, the Memory Journey, and that resolved. So I got to keep my Nadu, and then my opponent followed that up with a Harbinger of the Tide, which I would have been able to counterspell had I just been paying attention to like the fact that I had another Nadu in my hand. I could have played that Nadu with a Cavern of Souls in play. Like I could have just easily like mitigated that and probably gotten some land in play and like made up for the mana cost of the 3 mana. Wouldn't have been that big of a deal. So it was bonehead on my end that I lost out on all my mana. My opponent's follow up was a Murktide, and the game was over from there. In the second game, he just Demir tempoed me with like wastelanding me out of the game. I think I mulled to 4 or 5, and I got wastelanded out of the game and there was no real agency in the third game. Having said that, I was like, you know what? That's we're working the bugs off. We're going to get into the next one, and we'll just try our best. We're going to just keep going in there. I have 10 more rounds to go. There's no need to get down on me for making a misplay. Let's keep moving forward. And so in the next round, I played against Eldrazi Stompy, which the theme of the first 3 rounds for me is mana-based rebels on me, opponent plays Wasteland, or in this case, double Wasteland with Mycosynth Synth Spawn, and I lose the game. So that's what happened there. There was almost no agency for me in that game. So I lost to like a double Wasteland effect and just didn't have any more mana left on the board. Then we go to Bant Lands, which is another Wasteland deck. Pretty much the same stuff happened there. I think in the third game, I mulliganed to 5, just trying to be like, can I just be the fastest version of this deck and do the thing? And it didn't matter. I think if I'm not mistaken, the Bant Lands deck is actually also playing. Let's see here. They were also playing some number. They were not playing. Okay. They did have Vexing Baubles out in the sideboard. I'm not positive if I ever saw them, but Vexing Bauble in the second match was like what stopped me from even being able to like. I think I had a turn 2, but like couldn't do it with a Vexing Bauble on the board, and the fact that they could just remove my mana sources at any time made it so that I couldn't really win against them. Getting 2 for 1 with with Micah Synth spawn or whatever, sowing Micah spawn, really just bopped me for the day. Then okay, so now we get to round 4. Round 4 was actually pretty interesting because I played against Miracles.
Wow.
Sabrina was on Miracles, and it was a nice like chill match. And you know, for what's worth, at the beginning of the match, she was like, "Hey, like, I hope you win this because after this round, I'm just gonna drop from the tournament." I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna try to win." It was, it was. I have enough reps against Miracles from just knowing you, like, and knowing how the deck works. And she was very much on the like Mystic Sanctuary style build of the deck. That like I kind of understood what was going on and just played as efficiently as I could with my Urza Sagas, knowing that that's a part of the deck that just is very hard for them to deal with. And then, countering. I think I had a Teferi out at one point, so it just counters all the Miracles, or effectively counters all the Miracles. And was able to win that game pretty even handedly. And so then of course I told Phil, "Hey, I just played Miracles and won." And Phil's response,
this is my favorite part of your tournament, by the way. This is my favorite part.
Phil's response was, "Oh, was she on my build?" And I was like, "She doesn't even know who you are." Yeah. She didn't. Hopefully she's listening now and she knows who you are.
I hope she never does. That was the
not in a malicious way. You just hope that she does better than the deck you
that was the best interaction I had all weekend. Was you being like, "Yo, Phil, she's on Miracles. Isn't that great? Aren't you excited?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm excited. Is she on my build or is she on something else? I'd love to know and take a look." And she's like, "Dude, she doesn't even know that you ever touched this. Who the hell are you? Who are you?"
Yeah. I did. It was funny because I was talking to her about other content creators, and not to put her on blast. She was awesome, but there was a point where I had mentioned Brian Koval, and she's like, "I don't know any of these names you're talking about. The only person I know is like as a content creator is Bosch and Roll." And I was like, "That's the guy I'm talking about." So we all have our monikers, our secret code names. And it's confusing to people sometimes.
That is true. Right. That is true. Even I don't know. Are you because you're Dirtles in?
Yeah, I have now changed Melee, it, but right? I was Dirtle
okay.
Magus, which was great because people saw Magus and they thought I was on. I was on Red Prison.
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's not that. That deck does not Dirtle. Stop Magus. That's Stop Magus.
Yeah, the last thing that the Magus deck does is Dirtle.
Yeah, it does not Dirtle. It's dropping bows all day. Okay, so then round 5, I played. I just mentioned MTG Punk's James Wilcox. I ended up getting paired against him in round 5, and lo and behold, he was on Painter 2. We had, I believe this was a 3-game match where, like, in the first game, I just did my thing, knowing that like probably doesn't have like Fairy Macabre. I'm just going to go for it. In the second game, there was a good trade-off of like us trying to like make things happen, and eventually like Red Elemental Blast just got me, and James was able to mill me out with. I think I even cast Memory Journey, but he just Red Elemental Blasted it, and I lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the third game, I was able to do my combo and kind of tie down some goblins to and like a Vexing Bobble had left the board. I think the goblin was tapped at that point, and I was just like, okay, I'm doing it, and I was able to, go off that way, which was enough. I think actually it was the same situation where like James milled me out, and I had the green for the Memory's Journey, and I was able to counter the Red Blast or something like that. And I was going to put Cavern plus, I think I actually couldn't put Cavern plus blue card. I just was like, screw it, I'm just going to do this, and just one card, because I was like, if you have the Red Blast, you have it. So that, I think that's how that ended up going. Those were really fun. It was really fun to hang out and talk with James as well. In the next round, I played Mono Black Reanimator, and they were really good games. But something you have to know about me is I am a eye contact and mouth reader for the most part. Like my hearing is pretty much shot from like being punk in my 20s. And so if my opponent had on a hood, headphones, and sunglasses, like it was like poker stars, and there was a lot. It was already loud in the hall. It was very hard to tell what was going on a lot of times in the match where we were both sitting there because he was a low speaker, and he would pass the turn and I wouldn't hear him, and I'd just be sitting there like looking him directly in the sunglasses, being like, I'm waiting to find out what's going on, and he'd be like, your turn, and I'm like, oh, okay, like, okay, I'll do my thing. So it's very hard for me to play against somebody who's like concealing their face because I can't tell what's going on. But the games were fun. Mono Black Reanimator, and he started with Helm of Obedience and
Zach.
Dothy Voidwalker.
Zach, because just out of curiosity, you sit down across the table from somebody wearing a hood, headphones, sunglasses, and their entire face covered, and they don't really let you hear their voice in a meaningful way as you're shuffling up for game one. What do you put them on? Because Mono Black sounds...
Some brew?
Mono Black sounds like, of the top decks that they could be playing, that sounds like the one.
Yeah, some brew is what I would go with.
Was it some brew, or was it stock, like a stock Mono Black?
It was Mono Black Helm with like what's called the Fanatic, what is it, Metamorphosis Fanatics?
Oh, Metamorphosis, yeah.
And like, Barrow Goyce and stuff. I think he sided out his Helm plan after the first game. The first game was like Helm with Dothy Voidwalker, went to do the combo. I've Swords the Voidwalker, and then ended up like doing my combo in response, after. And then the second game was like Metamorphosis Fanatic into Metamorphosis Fanatic because I had already like removed, like countered one into like another creature, which was just very hard to deal with. But they were long games, and then the third game was very similar. It was like Metamorphosis Fanatic, like got there off of like me trying to like do the go with my fair plan, because he had Nile spell bombs or something like that on the board, so I couldn't really do my thing. And it was a Wasteland deck as well. The whole theme of this weekend for me was like Wasteland is very good against Cephalid Breakfast, especially because that deck it operates like a 5-color deck because of the 4-color deck, like because of the Urza Sagas. So it was very hard for me to get around anyone playing a Wasteland, especially if I'm mulled at all. And the deck mulligans well, it just doesn't. If they disrupt your mana base, you're in trouble. So I lost that one. I was now 2-4, and at this point, I'm out. I feel like I'm out of contention for prizes. I feel like I'm out of contention for just any respect in this tournament. But I did make a promise to everybody that I was going to stick it out for all 11 rounds. And I was like, you know what? Like, if that's the case, like, let's make this a challenge for myself. I want to have a positive record at the end of this tournament. Like, that's my thing. And everyone is asking, people would come up to me and like, oh, how you doing? I'm like, I'm 2-4, but here's I'm resetting the narrative, and this is what I'm doing. And so like over the course of the day, as like I think I rattle off my next 3 wins. My next 3 wins are against Azorius Dreadnought, against Cephalid Breakfast, and against Cradle Control. So that was all of day 1, right? And one thing you'll notice with those decks, minus the Dreadnought deck, is that they're not Wasteland decks, and I was able to just play my game fairly without being disrupted by Wasteland. Not that I'm the kind of guy to call for like, oh, Wasteland's the worst card in this format, get rid of it. Like, I'm a Wasteland gamer. But that I think is the real Achilles heel of this deck, is that like Wasteland can just get you, especially if you're trying to set up things through, a Urza Saga to get Shuko or something like that. Yeah. It can just completely disrupt you.
You're making me think of given how fast the format became for EW, between the Mystic Forge decks, the other combo decks that are in the room, like breakfast and everything, but then also how fast the Reanimator players can play, to just put an attraction into play and then obsolete the rest of the game afterwards. And like if we look at the breakdown of like the top, I think it was like top 32 or top 64, that like it was just a combo dominant room, right?
Yeah.
In combo, like putting like Mystic Forge and like those decks in there, like the Goldfish decks in there as well, like the interactive, like any type of like control deck a la in my sphere, just not existent in this format, right? And it's because everything's so fast. Vexing Bubble exists, like Urza Saga and Bowmaster are the dominant things, like at the top tables. So it's like that shell doesn't exist, and so you actually saw some other breakfast players. We didn't catch on necessarily, but like because you were still playing more Urza Saga, but you leaned into Days. I know one of my buddies, Devin Riley, who's been a breakfast pilot for a while. He's got some, a lot of big results. He was on for Nadu breakfast style breakfast, but he had removed all of his Shukos, all of his Urza Saga. He was on 4 Nomads and then 2 Shaman Encore.
Shaman Encore, yeah. Shaman Encore is a
which is just a Nomads Encore, except it's a 2-drop and it's a 1/2. So
2 mana. It gets around both Orcish Bowmasters and Chalice of the Void on 1, which was the thing, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of the Shukos, he was just playing Nomads Encore, which means that it's also another combo piece that can go at instant speed, right? Like you can, in a way that Shuko can't. But it allowed him to clean up his mana base, where instead of playing the 3, you were playing 4 Urza Saga, right?
4, yeah. I just like Urza Saga so much. I was like, I think,
So you were on 4, but he used to be on 3, and like moving away from the Shuko package opened him to being able to just be more full in on Nadu and the breakfast combo itself, but then clean up his mana base in a way that I imagine that like had you gotten an additional couple of months worth of testing on breakfast and ran into how soft you were to Wasteland just disrupting you meaningfully, that maybe you would have gotten to that same place.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I saw the Shaman Encore tech after Eternal Weekend and was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was cool. It's a cool idea, and you talking about how Wasteland was like busting you a bit. That I was like, oh, that there people have already like sort of advanced to figuring out ways to solve that, and they cleaned up the mana base to, and actually sped the deck up, right?
Yeah. So at the end of day 1, because there were 9 rounds in the first day and there were 2 in the second day, we could talk about the fact that this should be like a Grand Prix style event now, where we just have like 15 rounds and there's like a, at 7 and 2 or 6 and 3 or whatever that you graduate onto day 3, or day 2. So at the end of day 1, I am 5 and 4. So I fought my way back up to positive, and I'm like, all I need to do is win one more match, and I have done what I came to do. And people were like, not like cheering me on per se, but people are like coming up and they're like, yo, how's it going? Like, oh, like I saw that you won another round. So it was really cool to like see people kind of like, I got that like whole Rudy underdog, like people are like rooting for you kind of thing. That was super cool. And it helped me reframe the tournament. Like a lot of people will, a lot of people better than me will drop a tournament as soon as they're not live for top 8. But look, we came out to play Legacy and the biggest Legacy event of the year. Possibly, I don't think it was bigger than that Jersey GP, but this is this is the largest Eternal Weekend that's ever been for Legacy.
Yeah, there was some talk about how they said that it was the largest Legacy event since GP New Jersey.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true, because I recall there being a couple 2,000 player GPs over the course of like that decade in between. So maybe I don't think maybe I misheard.
Legacy.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't Legacy, but like for sure, when they were like, one thing that is we can be confident in was when they said that this is the largest Legacy Eternal Weekend of the 10 Eternal Weekends that have happened, and that's awesome considering that it was the largest Legacy Eternal Weekend in a Legacy format that is kind of busted. Like people still turned out to play what was arguably like not a healthy format.
Yeah,
which is great. That's honestly fucking great. Can you imagine if it was healthy? Like we're getting 6,000 people.
Exactly.
Maybe that's it.
And so so my stance was like, look, if I'm going to travel for this event, I'm going to take off of work. I'm playing all 11 rounds. I just don't like it. It is what it is. If I go 0 and 11, that's a story to tell. You know,
Zach,
it,
how do you would you are you of the mind that the 11 rounds for like the sake of pacing throughout the weekend is sufficient, or and this is a conversation that maybe we do for another episode, but it's something that has come up of like the old GP days of it being 2 days 15 rounds, that
yeah.
way you can actually endure more than one loss and be live is. But don't get me wrong, the logistics of adding 4 additional rounds on day 2 is not a small feat, right? It's an
No,
additional
but
approximately 5 hours, but
I guess that is Saturday into Sunday, and Sunday is like you're already going late, right?
the question is,
Yeah,
are you also of the mind that adding additional rounds so it could actually be a 15 round tournament if it's going to be tournaments of this size? Because one thing that you and I have both talked about in our recaps is when you start off when you don't start off on the right foot in a tournament of this size with only 11 rounds, you're effectively dead
yeah.
immediately, and then you change the narrative, and you did so successfully, and it was awesome. But I wonder if the feedback that everybody's going to give to Card Titan, if there is maybe talk about the tournaments getting larger or longer, if the turnout is going to be as awesome as it was.
Well, one of the things I think is important here is if you're of that mind. I am. I
Yep.
think. Look. Add the extra rounds. Make it a GP level event. If you're of that mind, look at the back of your thing for the your whatever the hell those things are called. Your tag for Eternal Weekend, and it's got a QR code. Definitely like use that. Nick is a very reasonable guy, and really like we've had that interview with him, and beyond reasonable. And they're actively looking for your feedback. So like this is a time to give them that feedback and let them know, hey, like let's make this a GP style event. Let's make this 15 rounds. Whatever. One of the things that I lament, Phil, is that I don't know, Phil. Do you have any GP day twos?
Yes.
Yeah. And so there's something about that, right? Like that was a goal for you at one time, like to get a day two,
Yeah.
And I lament that like that grinder goal, like a lot of organized play has died. And one of the things I lament the most is like that grinder goal of like getting your day two. Like I have 2 day twos, both in limited events, which is a bummer to me, but like at least I got those day twos, right? But to me, that was sort of a sign of like, coming into your own as a Magic player, is like getting your first day two was like a big deal, something to be celebrated. And the fact that they don't have that anymore kind of stinks. And to be able to bring that feeling back, to be like, I got a day two at Eternal Weekend, like that kind of thing, to me is like that's something to be celebrated. And to have that experience brought back to the players, especially the ones that know what it's like to get a day two or what it means to get a day two.
So that's interesting.
I would
like. I think that's interesting because my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, because maybe we were just our records were enough that it was to get us over the line. But with only 11
mine
rounds,
was not.
With only 11 rounds, everybody was able to play the last 2 rounds on the next day, right?
It's true. I mean, that was the big but see, that's that like that extra 2 rounds doesn't mean that much to me. The main thing was I want to grind out what I could, right? Like, sure, I want to play in the top 8, but like they're not going to let me keep playing somebody who's like, 145th in the tournament while the top 8's going on, right? So, it's to me, it was all about playing out the rounds that I'm allowed to play out. So if they cut to top 8 and I missed out on 6 rounds, like there's a whole venue of other options to play. So that's not the end of the world to me, getting those extra 2 rounds in. It's playing it out. And it used to mean something to play it out because you got Planeswalker points. So everyone would be like, oh, I'm just going to play out this tournament to grind for buys for the next event that I do. People don't do that anymore. People don't go like, oh, I'm on a, all right, well, I'll grind out the low tables to like get those 64 points per thing and, like make this worth my while type of deal. And it's sort of a bummer because one, you're missing out on good practice, playing out these events, you're missing out on good practice, and you're missing out on a chance to learn about what it's like to lose. And I think that the best way you can mature as a Magic player is to set aside the fact that you're like the Ash Ketchum, you're going to be the very best Magic player that ever was, and nothing you do is wrong, and every mistake that happens on the board is variance, and
excuse me, Ash Ketchum, Ash Ketchum, perpetually 12 years old,
Yes.
right? Sorry, one sec.
Was that it?
No,
He's just perpetually 12 years old.
He's perpetually 12 years old.
Correct.
And he won in like a couple of years ago. It took him like 14 years as a 12-year-old to finally win. He lost in the quarters of the semis every other time.
Yeah. And Zach Clark, perpetually 15 years old. So it only took me 30 years to X and 5 and actually finish an eternal weekend. You got to say this about Ash Ketchum. He plays the whole tournament out, right?
Zach, honestly, you should show up instead of in your Pac-Man suit. Show up as Ash Ketchum, and then before you start,
I hate Pokemon so much. Dude.
Before you start every match, you just turn your cap around,
like over the top. Yes. Now an over the top reference I could do. Being from Philadelphia, big Stallone fan, and then people could cheer Rocky for me as like they're playing like Eye of the Tiger, as I go like X and 5. That's what it felt like actually. Going into day 2, right? I know I have 2 more rounds to go, and I'm like, okay, like people are coming up and they're like, hey, like, good luck today, like they were telling me good luck, like top 8 was on the line for me. Like people would come up and be like, hey man, good luck today. Like I saw, you're doing great. Like keep it going. This is, you're doing this for everybody who's lost, like, and I was like, okay. But like, you get that sort of sense that like playing these things out means more than just like scooping and going to play in side events, which was the mistake I made the previous year. So of course, to finish out my day, round 10, I play Mono Green Eldrazi, and of course I'd get double Wastelanded out of the game. I did, game 1, I did get to like turn 2 them, which was cool, but not enough to get there. Obviously, once people know what you're up to, it's a little harder for you to get out. And I think that's actually in that round, I actually did mull to 4, and my mulligan was Tundra, Urza Saga, Cephalid Illusionist, and Core, the Encore Nomads and Core. And so I started with Nomads and Core. He dismembered it and then followed up with a Wasteland on the next turn after I played my Urza Saga off of the what's it called. So I pretty much was just like, yeah, whatever. Like I mulled to 4. Like what are you gonna do? So that was game for me. And so now I'm 5-5, and I go into the next round and I play against Cam, who is on Dimir Tempo. As far as I knew, Dimir Tempo. So game 1, I did my thing. After like he had Frog out and stuff, and I was just like, well, whatever, I'm gonna do my guys. And I got out like not doing enough things to like be like, okay, the inevitability is there, I'm gonna start attacking. And so I got that game. And then in the second game, I was on the full like Urza Saga construct plan and going for the beatdown and removing Frog and just getting there. And I get out Nadu, and I draw like 16 cards with Nadu, and I don't see any Force of Wills. I'm like, well, whatever. Like I've got enough inevitability here. What are you gonna like, put it? Like you're a Dimir Tempo player. You're not gonna put an Atraxa down on me. And even if you did, like I can just get rid of Atraxa, and I still have like 8 guys in play, And so then my opponent at 3 life casts Doomsday, and I'm like, oh no. I was like, this is the worst case scenario, like a combo deck. I didn't see this coming. So, of course, my opponent goes down to 2 life, and they make their pile, and then they extend their hand. They're like, I'm at 2 life. I can't do anything. I need Street Wraith to actually like win this game. And I was like, oh, dude, you had me. I didn't realize that you were on Doomsday at all. So, had I not been playing as aggressively as I was, I could have just lost the game by being at 3 life instead of 4, instead of like 2 life. But I ended up the tournament, a winner, 6-5, and like I basically I came away like feeling like I had at least accomplished something, and I left the tournament on a positive note, which was good. Like I like to win my last round of the tournament, just you feel better, when you walk away from a tournament, even if you don't place, this is like a winner, like you're like, all right, well, last round I did win that one. I can like go leave with that positive note, Um, but yeah, I mean, we're gonna have a talk about what we think about the format and stuff in the coming days. But I was severely disappointed I didn't play against more uh, like the mere tempo decks. Even though that is a Wasteland deck, I felt like I had a plan against those decks, and I just absolutely did not like playing against Eldrazi. The 2 times that I did, I was just like, oh god, this is going to be so bad for me. And then like I even had 2 mana up with a consign to memory, and apparently you need 3 to like stop everything that a sowing Micah Spawn does. So that was obnoxious. Um, the painter deck, I like that matchup because it's very intricate. Like you're really trying to like position yourself properly and figure out what you're gonna do, and then you got to realize like, okay, I got to get rid of these. I got to get rid of the painters, but I also have to get rid of the goblins. So it's like that's a whole thing, and then the red elemental blasts come in. That was to me that was a really like intricate, fun matchup. Dreadnought was interesting because there's that level there of like, okay, if you have your whatever, the gargoyle, that thrall, doorkeeper thrall, and you play a dreadnought, and then I swords that, then you stifle the dreadnought, and then I counter that. Like there's a whole lot of intricate like on the stack play where like meaningful interaction happens, and you could even take a swat. I think I took a swat from a dreadnought before I was able to like find a Swords of Plowshares and get rid of it. Those matchups felt very fun to me and very interesting. Whereas like Eldrazi Stompy, Bantlands, and my first Dimir Tempo like match in the third game just felt like there was no agency for me at all, and I just lost because variance / bad mana base. To that end, I think that had I tightened up my play just a little bit, and had I maybe drawn slightly better, I don't think that this was a bad choice. Obviously, this deck came in second place in the tournament, so I don't think this was a bad choice for this weekend. I think I chose the right deck, whereas in previous years, I think maybe I was a bit stubborn about my deck choice, where I was like, oh, I'm going to play Infect, and be that dude. And that's fine. Like, I think playing a rogue deck in a tournament like this is good because it keeps people on their toes and they don't know exactly what you're up to. Even though, once they see an Infect guy, they're like, oh, that's what's happening. But playing a rogue deck gets around a little bit of the like known hate, so there is that. But like, I think there's something to be said about like just picking like a good deck and like learning it and playing that deck as best you can and just like running with the herd. So I think I'm gonna try that for assuming all things are equal, I'm gonna try that for next Eternal Weekend too, and just kind of play like the best deck and see how I fare, because that was what happened when I got into Legacy. I was like, I'm just going to play Rogue Delver, and I'm going to play it to the best of my ability. And even here, like I had a mirror match. I felt like I was in control of that mirror match the entire time. What I do? Yeah, I went 2-1 in the mirror match, so that was fine. But I felt like I knew exactly what was going on. That's one of those things where like I like a mirror match. So like if it's just Dimir Tempo versus Dimir Tempo all day long, I'm into that. Like I could play the Wasteland. The Wasteland tempo style like matchup, and position myself, jockey for position as it were. But yeah, so that was Eternal Weekend for me. 6-5, not the worst, but not the best either. And yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah, and you also you did the recovery plan a lot healthier than I did, and turned it into something meaningful, which I honestly commend it. Like that's a commendable thing.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's that like bell curve, that like Magic the Gathering. Everyone's seen that meme, the bell curve of like the doofus and the Jedi and like the guy in the middle like crying, and it's like reasons why I lose in Magic the Gathering. And the doofus is just like, sometimes you don't win. And then the Jedi is like, sometimes you don't win. And the guy in the middle is just like, variance is blah, blah. And then my opponent like drew lucky, and like that whole thing. And it's like, at the end of the day, man, this is a random game. you have to do your best to reduce that randomness. But like sometimes you're just not gonna win Eternal Weekend. Like we walk into this event knowing that like there are 1,200 people there. Some number of those people are going to be better at Magic than you are, no matter how long you've been playing, no matter how many reps you have. You know, all the reps in the world won't stop somebody from drawing better than you. That's just how life works. How cards work, you know. So my stance was, you know, like we came here to see people, to have fun, and to, you know, to play out the tournament. And you know, you didn't play the last 2 rounds, but I think that that's a totally fair choice to make, to sleep in. You know, like it's totally okay to like just be like, hey, like, you know, I'm not having a good time. It's not healthy. If I lose 2 more matches, and I miss out on sleep, it doesn't benefit me to win those 2 more matches either. I think it's totally a healthy choice to be like, you know, I'm going to just fucking take a nap, you know, like, and that's a fair choice, or have a breakfast with friends or something like that, you know. So I think I don't think that like you took the most toxic way out of the tournament. I think, you know, you lose, and you're allowed, you're valid to feel not great about losing, but at the same time, I think, you know, like this was a level up moment for me in terms of like my maturity as a Magic player, to be like, you know, you're not going to necessarily win every tournament where there are 1,200 people, like, and you haven't before. So throwing that expectation at yourself is kind of ridiculous. So I just wanted to go out and try my best, and I tried my best, and sometimes I came short of that, and sometimes I exceeded it. So that's how my Magic tournament went. And with that said, we'll have another episode for you. Either if this is Friday, then on Monday. If this is Thursday, then there'll be one on Friday. So with that said, we've got an episode coming out every single weekday in December. If you can support us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/eternaljournals. This is quickly becoming a second job for me as far as time is concerned. Certainly not as far as money is concerned. But it would help me. It would help motivate me more, and to edit better if there was more coming in for a Patreon and allowing us to get better content for you guys. So with that said, thank you everybody for watching, and again, thanks to our patrons, and we will catch you on the flip. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.